we've got 238 days to go before the midterm congressional elections. And so, the Attorney General's whole point here is to engage in a profound, systematic, enduring cover-up of the real facts of the case. So, if, each one of the 238 days between now and the election, we're fighting about this page or that page or whatever, they're going to get by with 6 million documents not being released to Congress and to the American people, which was what was required in the Epstein Transparency Act. So we need a reset here. We need all those documents to be turned over to Congress. They've got to be accessible on Capitol Hill, not in some Department of Justice adjunct building where DOJ employees are looking over our shoulders. We need more than 4 computers. We need something more like 40 computers. And it's got to be available not just to members of Congress, but to our staff members, who the Supreme Court has said are basically our alter egos in terms of trying to do all of the work we need to do legislatively and in terms of oversight of the executive branch and the rest of the government. But, they've got us on a wild goose chase, Michael, and this is ridiculous. And I feel terrible for Danny Bensky and for the other survivors who have fought so hard to bring us to this point. And now the Trump Justice Department is engaged in just a prolonged, sustained cover-up.
If only there were someone we could ask about this. If only the Attorney General had been subpoenaed by a House committee and actually had a legal responsibility to comply. And yet, Congressman, one, do you think there's actually a mechanism that's going to get her before House oversight? And what are the questions, given the opportunity to question her under oath again, that you would now have?
Well, of course, when she came in the Judiciary Committee, she didn't answer a single question posed to her by a Democrat on the committee. She speaks about whatever she wants to speak about. She filibusters. She changes the subject. She reads statistics, but she doesn't answer the questions of the representatives of the people. And so, like Donald Trump, she feels she's completely above the law. Let us hope that there is a bipartisan interest, at least a majority, on the Oversight Committee, which will demand answers from her about what has taken place. But we need a complete reset of this relationship. We need to make sure that that law is complied with. It's not a game of hide and go seek. This was a federal command to the Department of Justice to turn over all the documents with the redaction of victims' names, but not the redaction of names of co-conspirators and enablers and criminals. But that's exactly what we've seen on their part. And so they want to drag us into little skirmishes every day about all of this stuff. And we just need for the law to be actually implemented.
We will be watching and waiting. As soon as this deposition gets scheduled, we will be on your line, Congressman, because we want to know the details. Can we take a turn and talk about Kristi Noem? I was very struck by, and I think we all were as we were chatting earlier today, about comments that you made about Kristi Noem after it was made clear that she was ousted. You noted, and this is from an NBC News article, we need a reckoning with the fact that there were murders that took place under her watch. There was mass violence and violation of people's civil rights and civil liberties. There's been intense corruption, and there's been rampant lying in the courts and disobeying of court orders. How are you going to get these? What does the reckoning, I guess, look like for Kristi Noem?
Well, we have to continue all of the oversight that has begun. And I hope that it can successfully be done under the Republicans. But if not, it will have to take place under the Democrats if and when we win the election in November. So what's at stake? Well, Alex Preddy and Renee Good are not going to be brought back to life, but we can at least have a real criminal investigation into their homicides. There were 3 homicides in Minneapolis so far this year, and 2 of them were committed by ICE, by agents of the federal government. We need a real investigation to see what happened, not another cover-up. We need investigation into the hundreds of millions of dollars that Secretary Noem channeled to various political friends and intimates of hers, so that money can be reclaimed for the American people. Hundreds of millions of dollars might be a joke to somebody in the Trump cabinet, but it's not a joke to the American people when they're cutting Medicaid and children's health insurance in order to make it possible for her to run these self-promoting ad campaigns all over the country. So those are two things. You know, one of the other things that we raised at the hearing, Simone, was about the fact that those agents and the Department of Justice have been lying to federal judges. And we submitted for the record all of these federal judge statements about preposterous things being brought forward by the Department of Homeland Security and approved by the Department of Justice. We can't just let that go. You know, we need to rectify all of these violations of the rule of law. Now, it's obviously a huge amount of work. But we can't let any of this stuff go, because then it just sets a precedent for the future that anybody who gets into office can get away with that.
Yeah, that's setting the precedent. I mean, and this administration has been doing that every day, setting a new precedent in how we address these types of issues. And I think because Mike Johnson and John Thune have effectively neutered the House and the Senate with any oversight responsibility or capacity. It is incumbent on the next leadership of both those chambers to take control. In fact, Senator Blumenthal, who was with us earlier, has already indicated that he would call for the Senate's permanent subcommittee on investigations to investigate whether Ms. Noem had lied under oath during a Senate hearing last week. So this ability, Congressman, between putting in political terms, unfortunately, because we don't have a bipartisan concern about the roguish behavior of this administration, Democrats in the House and Senate creating that pincer move to hold these individuals, and I'm being very, very kind with my words here right now, holding these individuals accountable becomes, I think, most important coming out of the block in 2027 to lay down the hammer and to clear the decks so that people know that you guys are serious about this. And this is just not another Washington ploy to get power back for the Democrats, and accountability is left on the shelf because the election is over.
Well, you're right about that. And perjury under oath in a congressional investigation is a very serious thing. Interestingly, the one thing she probably told the truth about was that she had consulted President Trump about the TV ad campaign. We have other sources who are telling us that Trump wasn't mad that she falsely implicated him in that contract. He was mad that she featured herself instead of him.
There you go.
And he was mad when he saw all the pictures of her on horseback in front of Mount Rushmore when that should have been Donald Trump. But in any event, there were certainly a lot of other lies that were told that day. And you're right. We can't let that go. If you read Navalny's book called Patriot, when people asked him, well, what's the one thing I can do? You know, we've joined your anti-corruption party, we've joined your democracy party, but what can I do? And he said, the one thing that everybody's got to do every day is tell the truth, because that is the thing that the thieves and the liars and hypocrites who run the regime can't handle, because their government runs on lies. And I think we're in a similar situation here today.